Hello, my question to the intelligence community is that do you guys know that you guys confess things and demonstrate things when you guys pretend not to understand people? I asked many times to get in paper the judge's names and the prosecutor's names. I'm saying it like this now because no one would get the single individual like an officer Powers. There's an officer Powers who's involved with a whole bunch of people from different parts of towns and intercities who've been planting evidences on my street and next to their houses and through conversations with people as roles with uses of corners of streets by judges and prosecutors timed as timed roles with overt criminal enterprises plural and with private I should say criminal enterprises in other words plural in that method that fit all to roles sustained with the tortures and extortions of our founders. And you guys will not allow this addressed honestly because you will not allow the fact cheaping nature slavery of them to be discerned. Because the breaching method measured and maintained already, it measures and maintains every modern country. It's through our own. So force, tricked, hurt, and persuaded everywhere the species body is from semi-ancient times before modern religions, founders, send me about this. And this is also evidence because they also have us attached to fake conversations about religion as Connecticut's roles, also with the exceptions tied to them and the difference of that. Like with their family members, the family members, they're attaching little kids increasingly to faked and changed conversations with their family members. They have the topics, treatments in the news, in the community as roles with as collusions with uses of locations. There are people with the name Mendez involved with wire crime, fake conversations with me since I was a kid as Weathersfield Police with the names Dylan and others I don't know the names of. Have been planting evidences on all sides of my street, sequence chefs, as their roles with names of the World Trade Center, and as their roles with the military on off the news locations, where the news like WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. When I caught them also doing that to force a principal child abuser, I couldn't believe when I was a kid. I mean, I could understand to an extent because I understand had demonstrated to me, recorded fest, how the assignments of the legitimacy pretended where it is non-legitimacy of the kids of the adults as the interbranch and or the exceptions tied to them because correlation shows us to read American history is to read where and how they were being used with their syntactical defenses, both positive and negative, as collusions, keeping other things, others, ourselves blamed for where and how. A whole bunch of the answers have to do with how there's a breaching method that had crazy laws against everyone. So when everyone responded, their description, excuse me, my teeth are falling out, and this they tortured me at Hartford Hospital. Has roles with the United States military, fake conversations with me, a whole bunch of people involved with the name Leahy, and with a principal child abuser with their kids' roles with it, with upskirt pictures with the kids forced, other natures of pictures of their own kids and of others' kids to make and planting fake motives. They have little kids in a Leahy family involved with themselves too, attaching me and family members of kids to fake conversations with themselves and others. This is with people with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his defendant capacities, also involved with various natures of courts and their families and intimate ties, planting evidences at locations, also with co-defendants of his, and in a civil case, but also as roles with criminal and civil cases, and with victims and with their advocates, and with the news have been planting evidences as collusions with interbranch switching names and forging names groups and cliques. No, not. I said that before that word was used with Wethersfield police and military involved with them, foreign and domestic. They have Saudi. They have my. I was married to a Saudi. They forced tricked her, persuaded her to roles with predicate acts with the FBI and with other agencies as collusions with people with campuses I went to from the youngest age. Already, the differences between that and all their nations that is being and having been assigned by a breaching method, unceased uses of it, better than perfect. All exceptions and exception nature that appear to be being demonstration of other thing better than other better than perfectly has that self value. Where how they're in other words, that's pretended legitimate because nature uses exceptions, exception nature additionally from any we could reveal or make up. In fact, it uses each finite part, each group part, and it's simultaneous, value inseparable from its system. That shows us it has distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous, but also further hyper simultaneous um, favoritism some, to the five distinct identities of sequence nature as itself, where we could discern with as attached to any extent of the simultaneous. We could deal with like per list, for example, and or grouped subjects or any individual subject. It has the value of a slash in the plural also. See how also increasingly there are increasing subjects. See, one identity of value progression, as identities are, it shows us that identities are relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. And we are further hyper relativity, not just to the actually honest, insane science reveals the relativity theorem. For example, we have black pupils and whites of eyes, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously like the other species do. And that's how they are simultaneous natures, while being sequence natures. And this is as there is also, they didn't reveal that all the different, even bugs have two eyes. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing, which is its identity in relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, the identity of value progression that is actually true always, not denying the slightest sequence shift, for example, the slightest detail, even if not missed by the self, missed by others. Like when people make economic value treatments and convictions, they simultaneously have to make evidential treatments, defenses of that, spoken and or not, that can't be defended and have afford discerned. Identities, volume science. Identity, therefore, names volume science. Also has locations. And this is actually, reason uses difference in ways greater than and simultaneously more finite than, and with more appreciation of actually how we are active, value/value progression as identity, as three identities of volume bound, for example, as is manifest, and where and how cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /s are manifest as three distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature, where they have the same shared identity. That is that where those parts have a semi-nature relationship to the complete identity as the cell slash S, and that way as the body of the fruit and or of the plant. For example, we could observe under the microscope. And based on the fact that and how the invisible but still discernible is taught about, like oxygen, the carbon gases, their mixture, like the cell, like the atomic nucleus, like the atomic proton, neutron, identity of relationship to itself, and like the the electron identification number given to the elements. See, but we have the sciences abridged because a certain type of breaching method in semi-ancient times before religions had to come about. Because already now, the sciences, even though regardless of whose fault, it forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded people to defend themselves syntactically, blaming other things other than ourselves, even when correctly, for things that the breaching method had roles with. One that made self-value uses of groupings of Americans, groupings of all modern countries. Tactical theory from how nature uses that to show its difference slash hyper difference. Because part of itself is too great to mix with temporary slash lasting space nature. And part of it is too finite too. And how it shows us this is how it is the order of the finite, distinctly from how it is the order of what is too great that is beyond our control, but one way at the same time. So it is hard to use strength and to do finite things. In other words, it's showing us with all things what causes positive or negative value nature progressions. Has to do with the also increasing value of how there is a distinct nature of hyper invisible but still discernible. More so than oxygen and carbon gases are. That and how there is an identity that is not humanity, is not the other species' bodies, but it is anyway. Further honest and sane examination of what is actually recorded reality. It shows how people were and are stayed motivated to measure and maintain for additional reasons from a breaching methods, where and how assigned, were roles, needs, and natures, blaming other things, others, ourselves. For example, for uses also singularly used by a breaching method of slavery, of witch trials, to the extent we know they were made up or not. We know that to an extent they were made up. How this is left out with the founding locations of the revolution. See, words like revolution and war They are used where the intelligence community has recorded themselves. With former Director of FBI Robert Luskin, a whole bunch of people have been planting evidences, roles with crimes, and uses singular through time of home break-ins in my area through time, intercities, with people that have been planting evidences. All investigations, all investigators, and their campuses never stop being used remotely. Black pupils. So Connecticut Interbranch has wire and mail crime methods, and with the exceptions tied to them. A Whiting Forensics building has roles with people from Central Connecticut State University since before I was born. Roles on my street with predicate acts. And since I caught them on and off campuses with this too. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim predator. And the time it takes for them to train people, for example, all truths are used for lies. The legitimate reasons they would have for staying with um, the campuses with overt criminal enterprises like Los Solitos per themselves, online too. These are people planting evidences on off campuses. Also, timed roles with unions used as criminal insidious nature, roles with their own leaderships with pension thefts, cram downs. Difference of that. So simultaneously, because they have collusions with the different uses of ground locations identities. The difference of the where there's collusion with the breaching method, which really furthers the most the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones originally and still. Our founders left us to deal honestly with the extortion of George Washington and of James Madison and the torturous method against everyone and how it was syntactically manifest where everyone would describe instances and or their feelings about their own feelings or other people's and are their descriptions of honesty and or the value of it also because of the value of what came first because it constantly investigations and investigators are being used to hide where and how all locations slash s were already used by the breaching method that never stopped using them. For example, with all sides in criminal and civil cases, victims and victims advocates, the lawyers on both sides, and names in the branch, switching names and sequence shifts, as names timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, foreign and domestic military exceptions tied to them, like prisons. They've been crimes with their worst patients and criminals since before they were caught. And since to keep them to hide roles with the people next to the body dumping spots because of the relativity of uses of investigators and fake motivations, which are increasingly real, like money. Like there's a former the Dean Judd, a former Dean Judd of Central Connecticut State University, and there's one with the name and there's one is involved also with a Dean Alford has a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the intelligence community having been influencing him to roles with planting evidences, identity thefts, and frauds, and with people like with the names like Joshua Stryker and people with the names Oliveri and people with the names Oliveri and Jensen recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed have roles with state police, people on off the state, people with conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices, planting evidences on and off campuses and along Route 3 through time, on and off campuses like Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, planting evidences with the FBI and other countries, their roles with Afghans and leaders and kids, since they were, and adult now ones that are also adults, since they were kids use remotely their differences. Like they have a woman, Afghan leader. I don't remember her name, but they made fake exception of me knowing her as roles with people who were sequence shifting leading up to the World Trade Center attack on off Trinity College who have been planting predicate acts at Weathersfield campuses through time, and with the names next to the campuses, and with the difference of how others are also doing this for them. So when they keep it unfolding, everyone's blaming others on other, and they keep it all bring it before the courts. But the courts have roles with this. Forgiveness is to not leave out everyone's roles with the breaching method unceasingly. For example, relative to where and to how we have black pupils and whites of eyes and can discern this from such a young age, but we have improper counters to it. So that, for example, the news locations, national/international, and intercities, as Connecticut's news locations, and they have roles with intelligence community next to their locations through time in such a way where they made connections between kids and adults at each of the campuses I went to, where they have roles also timed uses of that, where there means to discern conscious uses of all sides in criminal and civil cases, then again connected for themselves, and victims and victims advocates, lawyers on both sides, and the interbranch sticking things into databases with the news at the same time. This is also relative to how they got away with pretending not to understand people, and or where they got away with uses of exceptions too, because the breaching method uses arrays and quantifications. How people you're saying all these people, they put fake conversations with people, say that everyone's evil, everyone's bad. Oh, how would you describe what you're saying here? Get them on paper. I caught them with planting evidences on off campuses through time, rolls with this, and at the crime scenes, a whole bunch of different murders and body dumping spots, more than a dozen, and time uses of it. Also, all kinds of connections to the Whiting forensics. Even the witness protection program is involved with this. So it's simple. When I say simple words, like get them on paper, Connecticut into branch. They forged names, switched names, planted faked evidences, criminally foreign influence uses of all kinds of natures of experts like the databases experts. They want to debate their integrity or not. They can't afford the hyper evidential to be discerned because nature shows the hyper evidential. Nature shows our needs to have more words for identity than identity alone. For example, as nature. For example, for the same reason, we need to have more than one word for the name of a verb because it is how everything is hyper additionally valued. See, we have predicate acts with facts, roles that our news media recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having, and they're being shown to measure and maintain that no one discerns that. And by and needing to do that. Because the breaching method that already used them criminally foreign influence for predicate acts with facts, whole methods already as actually hyper recorded, as discernible, was actually recorded. See, what's actually recorded is being replaced by collusions, where and how this breaching method employed overt criminal enterprises, private ones originally and still. The difference between abridged constitution and or pretending unabridged but knowingly abridged too. That's that also needed by the breaching method to keep that difference to hide behind because it's abridged, and the nature of the debate about it is also employed effectively to measure and maintain. Everyone leaves how it measures and maintains out the breaching method. That is inseparable from what witch trials are about, let alone slavery. And witch trials are about slavery, even if they were completely made up, and regardless of who made them up. And that slavery is about how it's sickly distinctly against every natural difference, while it sustained other things other than ourselves. blamed for what it caused, while roles with that entertained, and worse was sustained. Worse because that was what is asked by it, by those laws, individually grouped it together. As collusions also, again, as with the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Hundreds of countries shared sick fakes, suits and ties, counters, and or exceptions. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim since semi-ancient times blamed other things, others, or selves for what the breaching method measures and maintains, blamed on other things, others, or selves, which is nature's demonstration of the breaching method, which is that identity nature is, where we know all ways. That's nature. So when we hear anyone speak for white or black, we hear the simultaneous being lied about. So far, with all formal treatments of our more sacred questions, what is Jim Crow laws about? Jim Crow laws about predicate acts with facts rolls with it, hyper predicate acts with facts method. So that's also predicate acts with facts methods roles, needs and natures, needs like, to hide from and to hurt what is actually being and having been demonstrated to correlation nature. And nature, in other words, so nature is the identity of relationship to positive and negative simultaneously, while and how more and more positive is being made. And nature shows us the difference between positive, that is criminal insidiousness nature, is positive or not. And part of how nature communicates this is where and how it answers our questions regarding why and how valuable, temporary slash lasting, positive difference could be and how they actually are. So before the World Trade Center attack, the World Trade Center names and names next to their location had already been a certain type of victim slash hyper victim that were made to speak for the law after coming through campuses that replaced what little kids are capable of correlating by how we know the volume of the Native Americans is not only our own volume, even though we're not Native Americans. If we're not Native Americans, if you're from another country and you have an indigenous population, relative to the breaching method that was entrenched before every modern nation, the only increasing value of those indigenous people and of their nature and of their voices regarding that. They're blaming us wrongly because in other words, we're assigned an identity that is not our own. And it's not to go to get them to see or not. It's to get, in other words. And we have to take some syntactical positions for the Native Americans because of all the subject treatments, individually grouped and together, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, even entertained, where in other words, you can't entertain it and afford defended reality. The ground below, not just the ground below the feet of Native Americans, the ones most well off. Across the globe, there is landscape theater, and or there is tactically, overtly denatured ground its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasing. Where Earth's special difference is being forced away from here leads to IDs, because we could be systems other. We could be temporary power, might, other. But nature shows again. But nature communicates with what is true always, not denying the slightest sequence shift, not denying the slightest finite detail left out, not denying, not valuing others have doing that, and or who could discern it. So, in other words, the jobs of the interbranch, every modern country, three branches of government are manifest. The same reason why the same singular reason why the value of the discernment distinctly of cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall slash S is manifest. Also, subject treatments with the issue of the border. See, a breaching method measures and maintains the value of the border treatments as a subject, leaving itself left out, and or the exceptions as collusion. And see, that keeps nature's needs pretending other. And so they value political, blaming other things, others themselves. Where how the voices of the law, like the FBI, former standing chairperson on the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence to Corrupt Organizations Act, and his co-defendants, Thaddeus Grabowski, for example. He's involved with Mendez police and ones with the name Domain, involved with criminally foreign influence uses of conversations they had with my teachers behind my back, fake demonstration of it too, with fake conversation in my face from across the classroom. And you know, I don't, in other words, and fake motivations planting has something to do with the roles of wire crimes. Well, and people on my street who planted evidences, and they're on another side of town, domains. I don't know where the Mendez police grew up or where they live now. They're recorded planting illusions like ties to me with on and off campuses. With others, I don't even know the names of. And it has something to do with their roles with the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, and their roles with a club there. There are neighbors of people of each other on Two Rod Highway who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with child abusers, leaders of kids, and mayors, and people with the name Dylan, and others I don't know the names of, who are the policing of the schools, and with military, foreign and domestic, who have roles timed with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, attaching kids or who are in the same grades to fake conversations and ties to others, fake natures of ties to others. And so no one could go back and describe the past honestly. Otherwise, that person is sensed and is hurt through our own. And then they lie about their motivations. I never had a conversation with Matt Provost. And he's one of the words. So, and there was a former Mayor Gold and a Debbie Gold. And he's got a Lee Gold, they say. People tied to them increasingly. And they non-verbally demonstrated as roles with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case. He non-verbally confirmed roles with verbal and demonstrated with the names shortly before that and leading up to that. People on off Fox Connecticut News were planting evidences with him and them, and with names on off WTNH with digital crimes, with child offenders, with the FBI and other agencies and courts, and people on off the state judicial branch offices, foreign and domestic military, state police, people with forensic locations, roles with all sides, and criminal and civil cases. And then again, as people leading up to the World Trade Center attack in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers. Right before the attack, they presented insidiously post-dated from inside the court to appear as if they'd been post-dated. I mean, they handed in late legal papers that they was proven after the World Trade Center attack had been handed in on time and time stamped by the court other than had been insidiously pretended to the court right before the World Trade Center attack. That proven led up to a 2006 district court case with a Robert Luskin as a co-defendant, and not only with a Thaddeus Grabowski, but also with Dominic Lapriata and his neighbors also have roles with state police and people with a Dearborn Street in Newington and a park near there, and involved with sides of parks where they take pictures of fake tags to people. These are people involved with mayors and neighbors of the mayors, like a Mayor Gold, and with state police along the Berlin Turnpike in the past and through time, with over a whole bunch of other countries, and the difference of that used roles all along the roads and routes. So this employs also the difference between parents and family members, because they're attaching and overt criminal enterprises and private ones. They're not legitimately with them. So a Violet family has roles with the FBI, with people with Los Solitos, also with the military, also with a whole bunch of people tied to Connecticut boxing gyms who had conversations with people from Weathersfield who've been planting evidences with all sides in criminal and civil cases, at depositions locations, with the lawyers, at crime as roles with the names at crime scenes. Then they're pretending they know me. Increasingly as ones involved with wire crimes in confessions with the Weathersfield police over the phones, which comes coupled with their wire crime methods, with where they attach me to fake conversations with their officers as a kid and now as an adult. Now these are Mendez police involved with this. And these are people with the name, these are males and females with different police forms mixed with the Weathersfield police and intercities. Ones with the name O'Neill, also involved with writing forensic and witness protection program. They have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with people tied to corners of streets on Griswold Street who had conversations with me, with my name used by them, by the intelligence community, that has timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and a whole bunch of other countries on and off campuses they were planting evidences at. So I minded my business in life. So in other words, there are means to discern this, and the people will confess and demonstrate this. These are also people that have been used by the World Trade Center attack investigators to measure and maintain cover-ups of what they were used for before that and now. And during the course of it, when you have people using isms in the news at communications locations, they are a certain type of victim / hyper victim. See, science reveals a function by how there is a hyper invisible but still discernible as that identity of hyper simultaneous, which is increasingly valuable to discern as a scientific value relative not only to just how it has our eyes distinct from the other animals and bugs, but also non-distinct and simultaneous, but also hyper simultaneously. And so we have its complete identity of relationship to itself that is inseparable from all parts of everything, even if something could be made up. And to have black peoples and whites of eyes, we know that thing we could discern things made up or the value of them being and having been made up by others. In other words, denied. It's where and how there are needs, there are truths, there are needs to have experts, otherwise you have problems. See, that truth is used for a lie by a breaching method which measures and maintains. That also being and having been measured and maintained through all the known and unfathomed reasons. and ones that keep being discovered because of how it uses and used remotely all natures of cases, because how it used remotely already all location slash s, everyone pretending other too, and or blaming other things, others, ourselves for where and how nature has been, while it is increasingly demonstrating the needs to discern a scientific value of a human fact achieving nature predicate acts with facts method, and or a criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method, using also the difference of that since ancient times. So reason works other than the experts on reason have been pretending. Where and how the breaching method employed to be defended, the fact that we need types of experts and readings of statutes, for example, that Russians and Americans have for themselves, and with uses of the name Peruta and and Payer, Bayer, Bayard, a lawyer of a police chief, Cintron, and other retired police chief, or dead, I don't know, or more than them, but at least two of them retired of Wethersfield Police, involved planting predicate acts with facts rolls on my street, also with news through time. And a Joshua Julian, who's also involved with where and how exploited are the exceptions. There are three branches of government, except for how others could act for them and as them. See, that was exploited since before our founders were born and slavery was entrenched North and South America. Where and how there have been readings of evidence, for example, that claims that George Washington had roles with slavery. They were simultaneously responsible and are responsible for where and how the extortion of George Washington was not addressed honestly, which that would have brought up the torture method slash S against him and other founders, including the ones they had to counter extort, forced to be our other founders. There's a difference between that too, which is left out with the readings of the amendments and the debate, nature of debate with that. Whether someone knows, if you're right about free speech, if you're right about religious rights, someone's attaching you a fake conversation about religion as the interbranch rolls with them, they're preventing your religious rights. You don't have to know the name of the statute. Marbury versus Madison clears a lot of things up. See, we have criminally foreign influence takes on Marbury versus Madison, on James Madison, because we have criminally foreign influence takes on each of our founders, because you guys left out how the breaching method was using that way, which was entrenched, couldn't be entertained syntactically or ignored syntactically, and afforded discerned the nature of any being who would speak for or even be for the Constitution unabridged. That's how it rolls. We're motivated to be with things like slavery because they were slaves, sickly distinctly. How sickly non-distinctly is recorded, but not self-valued. In fact, it's self-valued left out. This can be observed. Because we could counter that, how non-distinctly every modern nation is being hurt while they're being hurt sickly distinctly. And the only time that's addressed is when people are keeping what that caused and keeps causing bad, negative value, nature, progressions, accidents, it's where it's increasingly evolved with what causes that. Other things, others ourselves are blamed for that, even when they're correct. So they have people they're showing pictures of kids breaking into stores and they're speaking about crime. But those people are involved with predicate acts and child abuses and at elderly homes. They're involved with the difference between, they're involved with predicate acts with facts method slash S at public schools and private schools, and the difference of that. It's also all campuses, including fire, medical, and private databases, and the difference of that. See, this uses our databases relationships since before computers. This uses reassignments of how nature would have shown us to describe how algebra works properly. Algebra is about the identity of value slash value progression that the sciences share identity of value slash value progression as, and where and how they appear not to have a shared identity. That's also where simultaneously, increasingly, nature demonstrates where and how it uses exception nature, hyper additional ways from the ways we could. And if we ignore that, it forces lethal IDs for space nature transfer. This is more probably and is demonstrably how the ancients would have taught this. Is more demonstrably how the ancients would have taught this. Its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that is ignored, has been ignored since semi-ancient times. The Earth's a special difference, our own a special difference. Every person, everything is where and how it is making more of its volume that is hyper invisible but still discernible. Again, not just because of how it is the identity that is more so why and how each of the species bodies has two eyes. So it answers our questions. But we have other answers in their places for the uses of types of experts that the breaching method employed to use truths for lies. Summaries of the law. There's a James Comey, a guy who says his name is James Comey, who's involved with recorded, since founding, our founders told us to address recorded predicate acts methods, criminal uses remotely, not apart from each other, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the three branches of government and or the exceptions tied to them. Used remotely for their criminal and citizen natures of positive treatments and or negative treatments and names treatments, including as if or not as locations names, per the relativity or how and why. Nature has us additionally. Not the ground, but not its identity, but not outside of its identity. And its identity's relationship to itself. And the value of that is only increasing. It is only hypernative pure. That's why indigenous populations are charged hyper additionally from culturally. Although it seems that's kept away from them, the discernment of this, because they're kept cultural definitions, leaving out where the breaching method measures and maintains, for example, Black people's right to life. It employed that. What are the questions about what caused slavery? The breaching method our founders had no means to get out of because of how everyone was enslaved by a breaching. Everyone was measured and maintained through our own. So what it did was counter what our real founders did, which is our Native Americans. They enabled the human volume science to do damage control, as modern leaders did, only to an extent. because already all voices of formal factual nature blamed other things, others, ourselves, for what nature was demonstrating was is in fact human nature quality. Other things, others, ourselves, spoken for what is actually recorded, and others pretended. So leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in that context and sense, people, these are also names and natures that pretend they could debate people. They could pretend they speak clear, pretend other people speak clear or not, dishonestly, because their role is preventing mandated law. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves, fake locations with themselves, fake conversations with other people, fake locations with other people. And they did this when I caught them with a child abuser principal. And more were are involved with him in the news media and the interbranch, with upskirt pictures and other natures of the kids, also with medical families tied to those interbranch. As families who have timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones when I was a kid, and now again. These are also names, roles with the World Trade Center. They have victims advocates, all sides in criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch at the same time, how kept faked. Also with the news, predicate acts with facts roles. This sick nature. It is recorded how this is maintained, so we have to have a mandated law followed. You have to allow people to use short words as the nature you guys are forcing. There are short words that are just extensive because they stack names roles intercities. They stack timed uses consciously of roles with distinct natures of organized crime. Also used effectively where and how shared uses of locations need to keep blamed on other things, others, ourselves. The real cause of negative value, nature, progressive action, nature, their roles with it. Intelligence community from Central Connecticut State University, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They increasingly have roles with names on off and names tied to ones on off Two Road Highway / Hangdog Lane, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. They spread lies about people, then ask them to tell each other questions about it. All exceptions too. They use exception nature, criminally foreign influence, while pretending other, which is also hyper evidential. Part of how this gets away is every modern country can't afford to discern the hyper evidential because they spoke for positive and or for negative formally as criminal insidiousness nature of identities. So it's important to get the interbranch onto paper where they have roles. They have roles with Weatherfield Police Facebook page has roles with a Joshua Schumack and his mother's name. I don't know his mother's name. They took pictures of me trying to make fake exceptions of knowing me with some KKK themed, black themed interbranch. Also, all along Route 175, planting evidences through time. Also, interreligious cliques, KKK theme too, and Confederate flag theme, military police on off with names on off the state capitol in the buildings next to it, have roles with an O'Brien family and with a Cololo family with wire crimes with Weathersfield police through time, and now again. And they're lying about I'm to bring it. Oh, well, I'm bringing it up, and they're lying about why I bring it up. They brought it up. They're sequence shifting. These are people involved with planting evidences and sequence shifts on and off the court next to the World Trade Center right before it and leading up to it shortly before it. As Connecticut's intercities rolls, long time too. They've been planting intercities, predicate acts, fake motivations, timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, uses of the witness protection program, the roles with all these other countries in the news. So Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University's intelligence community said they have confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with names like Kalala with predicate acts with them on those campuses and at other campuses with their intelligence community associated with them, and their roles with names on Weathersfield Police, on names on Church Street, and intercities police departments with them, with Church Street and Old Weathersfield has a whole bunch of foreign and domestic medical families with intelligence community involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, people that work with the databases involved with fake conversations with people, with their students, then people with their conversations with their. So Ray Clow has roles with the military and with people with interreligious themes and intercultural themes, judges and prosecutors, and Weathersfield Police planting wire crime roles with them, and mail crime, falsified police reports roles, planting evidences with lawyers, fake motivations, has something to do with the roles of uses of corners of buildings and streets for for evidences crimes, and the sides of Millwoods Park and the exceptions on there has something to do with people planting evidences with mayors, also on off the state educational building and the locations next to it, as roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, attaching students of the same classes who never see each other around the campuses to fake ties, fake nature ties, roles with spreading fake things in databases. You roles and or use all exceptions use criminally foreign influence too. Tactically delusions rot too. It is hyper evidential where and how all the tactical delusions, inherent, active, and progressive when people speak regarding what Jim Crow law is about, regarding the debate of who's right based on what they read, what their evidence is. We have black people's whites of eyes. Stand down. So I'm trying to warn you guys. New York City, there's no game, Little Rap Guy and Friends in that cartoon. I'm trying to ask you guys to follow mandated law. Fox Connecticut News, please follow mandated law. Or WFS follow mandated law. Give up this what do you call it too? Roger Suzanne. And know how Roger Suzanne looks like one of the apparently an investigative reporter of Fox Connecticut News, who's involved with stories on and off the Weathersfield Police Department, with Hartford Police Forms and the FBI and other agencies and military police, also leaking through such. They have roles with Afghan families and the assignment of how a girl, they have a little Afghan girl involved with Los Solitos and unions, timed roles at corners of buildings, planting evidences, fake motivations. In other words, and they have roles with the name Kalala with the word maturity and with the word psychedelic, as roles with wire crimes of Weathersfield Police with their phones, as roles with these names with the Facebook page of Weathersfield Police, also with the name Shumack involved with these agencies and courts, planting evidences, and his neighbors in that location there where the Weathersfield Police Station is now, as roles with names where it used to be. People all along Church Street have been faking roles. They're faking conversations with me, fake nature conversations, fake ties. They say things to pretend to hide what came first. There's recorded remote uses of the identities of law where they pretend they could speak for their own integrity or other people's. Originally and still, that's what our founders left us to communicate. So please fix the fake things that are typed into Connecticut's databases and get them onto one name and sequence into branch. They know they switch names. There's a Courtney that switched names with one of the ones who switched names with a Courtney at the Britain Superior Court. And this is after they had roles with rape threats. And this is while they have roles forcing the principal child abuser. And this is after they already had roles. Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court's families and intimate ties. They affected confessions to me because they've been influencing people to say things and plant evidences after they already confessed and asked for help and said other. For example, at West Hartford locations. These are people also involved with the depositions of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, various natures of proven federal criminals, and all the kinds of natures of different the federal crimes or organized crime bodies and cases brought up by the fake conversations, the news, and the Connecticut Interbranch fan pretended with me same time, so I would not be able to speak. I'm not the only one they did this to. Those families interbranch, that a whole bunch of families that work with the Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, they have roles with names near me that planted wire crime tricks and little planting fake ties and nature ties to me since I was a kid. And it's nothing personal. In other words, and when it is, they're lying about that too. They're doing and saying whatever to get things from being on paper. Has something to do with their roles we use as a corner of the street, tied to connected home break-ins in the area through time that Wethersfield Police and other police forms had time roles with, as the names involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the witness protection program involved, and a serial killer, and the body dumping spot, all along Route 175. These are leaders of kids. And they're their kids. Everyone's repeating fake things. And then they're repeating, just I saw someone walk by. Well, they walk by, that means they know them. They're doing that to fit in the blanks because they're used remotely. To understand that, you have to understand there are foreign bodies recorded involved, not just overt criminal enterprises. They're ones with the name Sullivan and O'Sullivan, who have been planting roles on and off the campuses through time. At Trinity College and CCSU, increasingly people on Wethersfield have been planting roles with the names next to those campuses, with names on my street. And where I lived, they have roles there too, planting evidences. So follow mandated law for your branches of government. In New York City, see, they have you guys on the edge all the time because they have collusion on every campus you went to, and the difference between that is also employed by the breaching method that measures and maintains what can't be entertained about how the suburbs were tactically denatured, let alone New York City. And they can't afford, if any one country, tries to fix its tactically denatured identity relationship to itself and to the potentials that the identity of space/existence reveals through our fact-keeping nature, if we allow it to be that nature unabridged, let alone legalized, abridgments or not. And that can only be discerned by nature. Nature itself demonstrates, its identity demonstrates negative value nature progressions acts in nature is any system that entertains part of what the colonial laws entertained, part of what was left entrenched that was entertained. The breaching method knew that what Jim Crow laws were about was what it forced entrenched to blame other things other than themselves when it caused things, which it already did because it sustained it. In other words, it had roles with all the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and the difference between them as criminal insidiousness natures and the interbranch had uses of that too, where they would syntactically value those differences, where and how manifest everyone are names. That's also, again, hyper evidential. Where and how their voices pretend science spoke for what Black people's rights of lives are about. So they have employments of people pretended you have to be able to be classified as Black with your skin to speak for Black, or you have to be classified as white with your skin to speak for white or Black. I mean, the fake sides, leaving out how the breaching method assigned that, like nature, not just that logic. There are doctors, including ones with badges, foreign and domestic, who use are recorded using and having used phrases with their patients as collusions with them fake conversations tied to other people, including ones that are pretending to be undercover, apparently. In other words, legitimately. They the phrase like passive aggression, because they have roles like identity theft, fraud, fake conversations with people, fake evidences, The intelligence community has roles fabricating conversations with whole fake quotations put between a Leahy family and me. We never had conversation verbally. The guy put it. I know. I knew about that guy before he put the. I didn't know he worked there. He confessed, demonstrated that he's pretending other. There's a Leahy family involved with various natures of courts, family members, their judges and prosecutors, and their family members who've been planting evidences with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Little tricks, illusions, they spread lies through people. Then they say something right timed when someone's going to walk by, or they have someone, and no one's going to be able to respond. No one knows what it means, but you'll remember the people's names. So now I saw it phenomena like with Facebook, the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, and the FBI has roles with the witness protection program, various ways recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on Facebook too, on off the state judicial branch offices and conjunctions to it, on off the state, on off. They have roles with on off the state judicial branch offices and homes and locations next to it, and names tied to that, and conversations tied to with other things that are connected by their motivations with uses of them roles with predicate acts with facts when they were kids. Also, the difference between where and how they could discern that and they couldn't. These are not legitimate roles with our nation's defenses of ourselves, and where and how it takes them a long time to train people. That's one of the excuses they're making, where they have military sources involved with the YouTube channel of Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom, and where and how Ukraine and Russia have people on off UPS involved with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Connecticut military and interstates military, Connecticut involved with Kuwaiti military and with Saudi military. They have roles with Trinity College and with Central Connecticut State University, with a whole bunch of names involved with predicate acts on my street since I was a kid, with the names Violet. There is a Joshua Stryker who also faked conversations with me and ties to me since I was a kid, and he has roles with sequence shifts, where they the next day they have people make confessions, then the next day he appears, and then pretend that we had conversations, because they have roles of behavior racketeering, fabricating fake behavior of people too, on and off medical locations too. Hartford Hospital has a whole bunch of people that have been planting evidences on and off child campuses, including with a principal child offender. And they have roles with the family members of deans and of other principals involved with this, and with their uses of corners of streets. So I don't know the Canisalis family. They're one of the ones in my sixth grade class, involved with people with the Mayor Gold, and increasingly involved with foreign and domestic military and medical and religious nutbags and medical predators with kids, delusions raw. In other words, people that were in my sixth grade class, my first through third grade, people planted evidences and used corners of buildings, sickly distinctly, and confessed, demonstrated the political branch, mayors, and the executive branch, Hartford Police and Wethersfield Police. I found out it's Rocky Hill Police families, Wethersfield, Newington are all mixed, and they have been through time. They have the word click. They have counters to each other where they have craziness in there that are used to measure and maintain collusions, not just with the federal agencies and their family members. They use corners of streets where people never see each other. They're going to walk by and make a fake exception where the branch of the government you can't leave out with the courts, where they have crime methods, where they have predicate acts methods, where they're pretending people are lying or they don't remember things, because they make fake exceptions of knowing people, and they mix that with totally made up. So there was a Brian Silver who's one of the ones recorded involved with Central Connecticut State University and interstate universities. MIT has people involved with them with also the the difference between intimate partners and their ties to each other, and roles with on and off campuses and inter campuses that are not connected. They're putting fake things to make illusions seem real. Where and how they have overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the branches of government as roles also with the news, planting and lawyers on all sides of criminal and civil cases, victims and victims advocates, collusions against strangers, and is also recorded how they'd be motivated to it. Sandy Hook promises, for example, and the courts involved with countering um, Alex Jones, and Alex Jones is also collusions with them, preventing mandated law when people use simple words regarding child abuse as leaders of the kids. So they have people involved with Sandy Hook campuses, including a present campus there, and fire campuses. The fire departments have roles with Russians and ways that, and medical crimes with Russians, with psychiatry too. No, tactically delusions raw, in ways that demonstrate they must be trying to keep nuclear things cool because of how the nature of nuclear has been described to us. So also when they pretend, when they speak about American history, they leave out the breaching method. They're leaving out proper evidences treatments because people pretending they don't understand the short words of people. And then they are used to measure and maintain dishonesty regarding their long words. So you have to follow mandated law for interbranch because these are people that have been with the news planting evidences intercities and interstates and lying about what they feel about when we use their names like that. Their roles with extortion methods, their roles with violence, they have roles with poison and various planting of motives roles because of the foreign names roles. Also further than this, they have roles with Koreans, people with they have something to do with their roles with Koreans and with Taekwondo places and with Yukon military involved with names like names tied to ones like Pandolf and Violet, who planted evidence, fake ties to me, fake sequence shifts when I was a kid tied to this, and uses of it when made fake exceptions of knowing to me. Has something to do with their roles of West Hartford intelligence community and international and intercities. So Mark Viola has roles with West Hartford was one of the things common between the Weathersfield people. And there was reports of that street he lived where they used to live on Kylie Drive, like and there's the house is on there where they use my name. Take a picture of me, maybe standing next to mine, or have a conversation with those people. In other words, it has something to do with their roles with routes all along Route 3 and religious spots, as the names on campuses, also with on and off campuses, putting fake things in databases. I never had a class with Mark Violet. I never had a class with um, Justin Glavinskas. I don't even know what grade he was in or if he went to my school or not. I saw him one time real fast in my school. The only time I ever saw in school, someone one of the ones who went to my grammar school, who's one of the ones that were planting evidences with intelligence community from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, has been putting people on campuses, intercities at each age of campus, where and how they have effective employments of their motivations to obfuscate how the sciences share an identity and should be and need to be described properly. How and why. For example, there are smiles and or are frowns on the faces of the kids, as described by tablet class math. and we're hyper evidential. It also is recorded, consciously used. The difference between what would be described as good teachers or bad teachers, that difference is also employed, used by a breaching method in ways everyone misses, but to extents. In other words, there are other subjects that have been integrated, that have been nested with our subjects, treatments, experts, and or ourselves at each age of fact, human nature. For example, blaming other things, others, or ourselves for things our founders, who had to extort the other founders, communicated for us to blame in the breaching method. For us to communicate, for us to understand how the breaching method could, would, and effectively did and does keep the other natures of founders and their generation, breaching method tools, weapons, and maintenance while pretending other, through other motivations too, apparent, but all that's used remotely. So we have to keep things simple. So there are a whole bunch of people with the name Kevin Dillon, Anna Dillon / Annie Dillon, how she uses the difference of that. They also have women with the name Bobby and men with the name Bobby. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with names on off the Route 3, along Route 3, and conjunctions to that and to that, like the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, interstates along Route 3, Route 175. They have names that have been planting evidences with people on off campuses, and relative to their predicate acts with facts methods, and their uses of the words like maturity, psychedelics, and the names of officers. There's someone who has been commenting in my videos named Ron, out of the different counts too. He repeated the name Powers, and then he said Edward Powers is one of the names he brought up. With Wethersfield police have been using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie, also with courts, planting evidences. There are a whole bunch of people tied to and as of Brian Silver and involved with foreign and domestic medical families, planting evidences on and off campuses with little magic tricks, fake ties, fake natures, and ties to others, with judges and as judges and prosecutors involved with their family members, then pretending motivations. So we have to keep peaceful means to counter too, because they have roles with poisons and guns threats, verbally and non-verbally. And they have a Phil Cololo who's involved with that, and further, violence threats. He's not. So we're gonna have to get a peaceful means to do this, to get this on paper. And there's a Bob Chase who's also involved further with the child abuses. And see, they're hiding behind how they have judges pretend to not realize roles. They're also being lied to increasingly, the judges. But they also have how they use the family members of the interbranch to keep them, fake and pretending other. Whole bunch of different ways. Judging Freedom channel with Judge Napolitano. On one of his videos, he noted that he had 400 arraignments in one day. So in other words, it is relative to where and how mandated laws prevented someone sickly distinctly if you're classified as white or black. If you want to use what is actually hyper evidentially recorded, which is where and how our soul longs, even if we are not Native American, to have unabridged their system, is because nature is unabridged, hyper Native American, hyper native human volume science. not just hyper. It's hyper native. But anyone's words who are not the way it wants its systems, that difference is only increasingly valued to show that we can make. In other words, there's an insanity to have either mutually assured destruction or natures of peace roles that has the suburbs designed tactically denatured for the torture and extortion of our founders, let alone the cities, only allowed to be fathomable. Rolls with it, otherwise you're going to be measured and maintained. I mean, otherwise you're going to be sensed and discerned and worse than just hurt through our own, even if helped, till collusion with the criminal insidious natures of positives or with the negatives as collusions, where an identity has relativity to both things. So our syntax subject treatments have relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, where how relative everything is inseparable from that identity of hyper-simultaneous, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that only equally increasing as the identity of three identities of zero. Since before the first physically manifest things. Boxing, this is more probable and is more practical, increasingly relative. No. So follow mandated law for the Connecticut interbranch and get them on paper. They have rules of more poisons and the difference of it, because there is a means to discern where and how foreign bodies have been using remotely our individuals, group differences. I never had a conversation to them. Maybe try to make a illusion of other with a Native American who has one eye at Hartford Hospital. He has roles with a whole bunch of people on off Central Connecticut State University and on off Trinity College, involved with former director of the A.K.A. Robert Luskin, and with other agencies, with predicate acts on my street, and everywhere I went, with the same houses, involved with wire crimes, with those and ties to those people and uses of it roles. And it's not personal. This is how they do this against everyone. That's why we have to have things means peaceful. We have to discern the difference between hyper peace and peace. So they have phrases like what is it called again? Passive aggression, involved with sequence shift roles that interbranch were shown to self-value as means to measure and maintain. No one's going to discern what's actually recorded, even though it's means to discern it. So the intelligence community, which includes interbranch family members and the exceptions tied to them, simultaneously they had collusions timed in the past through time and still do with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and a whole bunch of different countries as roles with uses timed of all along Main Street and where it runs into Wethersfield Avenue and Franklin Avenue, where they run into the heart of Hartford there, where they run into Main Street. and where they are parallel with the Berlin Turnpike, which is also these three roads and locations have roles with the intelligence community around me that has been used remotely, where their adults and the kids are used remotely, pretending passions and motivations when they hear others use their names or when they hear other people's names used. Has something to do with their intercities uses of locations and their homes, and the conversations with everyone around everyone. This is where it keeps its motivations and roles, hurting and stealing from everyone, blamed on other things, others ourselves. You think that taxes, wherever honestly applied to counter the impositions upon the people of Hartford, Connecticut, let alone New York City. The suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of tactically denatured landscape, the ground's identity of relationship to itself, and the value of it only increasing as a system replaced by criminal insidious natures of means to cause positives, and by functions, by the real causes of those negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, used to measure and maintain other things, others, or selves, blamed and that self valued by the breaching method employed. You know, all exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. So please have Judging Freedom respond for the FBI, also with the Connecticut Judicial Branch offices, with the various courts that have been recording, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they've been planting evidences, also with their hallways and all sides in the cases. Please get them onto paper with the New Britain Superior Court and the Hartford courts, who I recorded by the people. I was asked to help to help people who Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Courts have been affecting them to you know, planting evidences roles and natures and collusions at West Hartford locations before the World Trade Center attack, on and off child campuses, all ages and natures of them involved. So follow mandated law for the military too. Get them to pick one name and sequence too. Ooh, watch. Watch where it is recorded actually. Please, don't make me beg. Follow mandated law for Connecticut into branch. Get them on paper and now with the Wethersfield Police. Have them pick one name and sequence, or or pick a name to speak for themselves. Get them on paper now. I want a response for the Dillon family's roles with the FBI and the child defenders, abusers of the campus, and what I recorded that they left out. A whole bunch of people tied to Rob Rodriguez, a Mike a Mike a Mike Roberts, also a shopping center there, and with that involved with the intelligence community with Daryl Chandler, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed his roles with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, with people with Koreans with them, and with himself putting fake things in databases. And he has someone karate instructor involved with him and their family, planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with people on my street. I never saw on my street in my life. Has something to do with their roles with Newington spots too. They've been planting evidences all along the roads and routes like Celestine Highway, as those names with the spots next to where the Wethersfield police are now and in the past. So these are also names on off the World Trade Center who have roles with the attack, including as some of the victims. So forgiveness is to follow mandated law. Get me off the fake conversations with other people about the World Trade Center too. That's increasingly a problem with the interbranch and foreign at the same time. Planting evidence is also with the military. Also have all natures of sciences and their experts use criminally foreign influence. The translators roles with this. Tactically delusions raw. Saudi Arabia did not want roles with psychiatry before the World Trade Center attack. They increasingly have roles with names that were planting fake things in child databases with other countries too, like the Koreans. And the difference between themselves with the Americans, the FBI, they have something to do with the FBI director all along Elm Street in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield as people roles with predicate acts, directly and indirectly with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his roles with them on off the state judicial branch offices, planting evidence at other locations, little tricks with facts. They said it has something to do with their roles with Rhode Island too. It's also Vermont. There's also neighbors of and as a John Dennis and a Joe Dennis. I don't know his sister's name. And then their teacher, they have teachers involved with a former mayor Gold with foreign and domestic medical corruption with child offenders, planting evidences with courts and private tied to them. Now, these are further names with Sandy Hook campuses that have roles with the Bryan family with wire crimes with Hartford Police, Weathersfield Police through time. There are ones with the name Powers. And with the news has been planting evidences at locations with their sources, people involved with the stories, like on Church Street in Weathersfield, and they have a recent there's a car crash. I'm gonna try to see if I could just. There was a report. In other words, they have locations along Ridge Road involved with people like with the name Casper and with Judge Smith, who have been planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to little kids, and with the foreign people, collusion with them, fake motivations. They've been planting evidences all along Route 175. That's one of the conjunctions to it, and Walker Hill Road, and on off the state judicial branch offices, which is right next to Route 3. So, in other words, they're preventing us short words because they're fabricating audio and video. And because they've been planting fake things into branch databases, whole fake conversations with people with audio and video transcripts. And these are names involved with these are intelligence community leaking their uses of elections locations and the spots next to it. The United States and military has rolls next to their houses further with the map that's coming if you don't get on paper fast. So make sure the Valley Crest there's the judges that were planting evidences, fake ties, nature type, medical crimes rules with people with the name Schedule and with sexual circles involved with the extended family members of prosecutors, involved with girlfriends and family members associated with Rob Schedule. I don't know him and his sister, men and women associated with her involved. I don't know them either. They're involved with intercities with the names further like Middletown locations. The roles with Middletown locations increasingly involved with child abusers at the same campuses through time. Timed uses of them roles and corners of the streets near their campuses used to plant evidence of identity theft, fraud, slanders. Increasingly, people tied to a Soviet Bajaria and a Jeremy Grohl, planting evidence of fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Little frauds faked about themselves to others at the same time, where they have the intelligence community invested this way. And as roles with the corners of the streets near me, with the witness and protection program was involved in the past and is involved further. Time uses of it. Increasingly, people on off Trinity College and CCSU have timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and their roles with all these other countries associated with these campuses. So used from off them to where the collusions stay on off them. Collusions. So the motivations, be careful when you just stay on that predicate acts and get me a response for the principal child abusers' confessions and what I caught them doing. Because they've been pretending others recorded to the parents. See now how they keep repeating about sexual topics and the same old treatment of it comes out and they're measuring and maintaining for their own needs while the breaching method measures and maintains a whole bunch that's entertained with those subject treatments and with the way education is actually manifest that can't be entertained and afford discerned the short words of our founders as they actually communicated. Communications is greater than it is more finite than what is said, while it is as the value of what is said. And comes with the value of what it comes with that being value more important, or what came first is value more important. It also shows us this we're in how it shows functional. And there are even benefits by how its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasing can be discerned. But not one has learned because you guys have blamed other things, others yourselves. where answers are actually capable of being, and where their absence is also still used to measure and maintain non-discernment of what is the worst problem at all crime scenes slash S for a hypercrime scene that each modern country has stayed since some ancient times. Not that has stayed of British sciences. Jim Crow laws. I never heard this anywhere, but they are about a predicate acts with facts delivery system method that was already entrenched. They're about a criminal insidiousness delivery system method that was already entrenched. They're about the screening of it through the experts on each of the sciences, including on the law, who are collusions while pretending through other motivations. It knew that they would be doing that and is using that remotely. It's keeping that the outcome per predicate acts with facts methods into databases and uses of them. So, vaccines.